Discovery changes now in place for the trials here in New York State as the experts aim to keep cases from being thrown out on technicalities. We'll ask a legal expert if these changes will have the desired effect, and we'll hear the concerns that some opponents have as well. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray here in Albany. Changes to the state's discovery laws now in effect. The changes aiming to close a loophole to make cases ensure that they're not tossed out on technicalities. Discovery, by the way, is this period in the civil or criminal trials where the involved parties on both sides get information relevant to the case. Before changes take effect, if there was a significant delay in receiving information, such as the time it takes to redact sensitive information from 911 calls or maybe police body cameras, cases were being tossed out because they missed the deadline. The governor explaining how often this would happen.
Dismissals surged from, get this, 10,000 dismissals across the state in 2019 to almost 50,000 dismissals in 2024. Look at that. That's 50,000 victims who did not get justice. Now, I'm sure that there were numbers of those that were justified. But for the ones that were dismissed on technicalities or minor omissions that have nothing to do with the guilt or innocence of a defendant, those are the ones that we're getting after today.
State budget allocated $135 million to help prosecutors and defenders implement these new discovery changes. Joining us now is the president of the District Attorneys Association of New York, Mary Pat Donnelly. You're also Rensselaer County District Attorney.
Yes.
Welcome to the show. Congratulations on your position there.
Thank you.
Before we jump into where we are now at Discovery, just for those who sort of given it a cursory glance, but they don't really, way back when, before they tried to fix discovery laws, what was the feeling? That prosecutors were holding back too much information or getting too close to trial before they would give the defense everything that they had?
I think that was the fear, is that they needed an opportunity to evaluate the evidence before they can make a decision about a plea. And cases only went through the discovery process after plea bargains were considered. So this was looking to flip that so that everything was put forth early so that it can be looked at and determined how they want to proceed.
And I don't think anybody went in with ill intention when they tried to fix it, but it seemed like there's always the government's known for its overcorrection. They went so far the other way. They put when they changed it, they put too many rules in place that were Kathy Hochul in our show talking about thousands of cases being kicked on technicalities because a cop didn't get the DA some piece of video or something in time, and so when they corrected it, it was like almost too much of an correction, right?
Absolutely. It was kind of like a perfect storm, too, because you're talking at the same time the 50A was repealed, the same time that most of our agencies were deploying body camera. So all of that information that was required by the statute was not only what was contemplated by the legislature, but it boomed into a massive increase in documentation that was required.
Now, to the governor's credit and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, I think they all realize, yeah, we meant to fix it, but we may have created some new problems here for our DAs and our prosecutors, and to some extent defense attorneys, I guess, although they certainly benefited from cases being kicked. Then they tried to fix the fix, and
right.
That's where we are now.
Right.
What exactly did they do? What's changed now in 2025?
Well, to make it to break it down, because discovery, as I always say, is not something that is really digestible to the general public if you don't work in the courthouse. What we were seeing is mandatory discovery had to be turned over very quickly, and it was everything related to the case. And that is a really vague statement. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of duplicity in documentation. There's a lot of situations where multiple police officers respond to a scene with body camera, and we may have 7 of 8. Maybe 8 just stood in the background, but we don't have it. And we don't know we don't have it. That's what we always try to explain to the legislature. We don't know what we don't have. So what they've done now is they've put in place a situation where a defense attorney has 35 days to object to what I turn over. And when they object, they have to say, I think this is missing. And if we have an opportunity to confer, there's a requirement that we confer, and I say, okay, well, let me try to get that. And if I legitimately can't get that, I can still certify, meet my requirements, and move the case forward. There's an opportunity or a requirement of discussion as opposed to the gotcha moments we were dealing with.
I would imagine, too, as an obligation on your part when you're looking through hours of video, too, from different angles of different body cameras, you got to protect innocent people as well. I mean, you're not trying to redact things to hurt the the case of the criminal defense attorney, but you talk about that a little bit. It's not like you can just say, oh, give me Officer so-and-so's tape from last night, and you just hand it over, right?
Right. No, you have to process that information before you can turn it over. So it isn't just into the DA's office, out to the defense. We have to take a look at it, make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to cause harm to anyone. Now, the new tweaks are now allowing us to automatically protect certain sensitive witness information like social security numbers, home addresses, things that before we had to make an application to do. So I think we've all come together and said, listen, that just makes sense. We don't want to put people in jeopardy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember when one of the criticisms of the changes were you have a victim of a crime saying, well, you got to, that DA Donnelly's got to give us everything. Well, oh, okay, buried in there is that she's staying with her sister right now, and here's the address, and now you're putting a victim at risk where, or here's the name of an eyewitness who's really going to help our case, and this is where Joe lives, and here's where he works, and I mean, you got to be careful with information, right?
Yes, absolutely, and that's what this is going to allow us to do, allow us to protect them, and the goal is to protect them. It increases witness cooperation, which gets you further down the line, justice for victims.
We were talking before we went on the air a little bit, because it always struck me that there's a perception, maybe from the public, that these DAs and prosecutors, these cops want to hold back information because they want to sort of sandbag us, surprise us at a trial. But to the defendants, it's almost a detriment not to do that in a way, because you want to see everything ahead of time, don't you? Because it helps the defense lawyer figure out what they're going to do. I mean, if you guys got. If this person tells their lawyer, oh, I wasn't there at the grocery store when they say I knocked that guy in the head, and they go, okay, well, Market 32 just gave the police the tape. Here it is. This sure looks like you. Maybe now they're hunting for a plea bargain versus rolling the dice in trial and getting a worse term. Exactly.
As I've said all along, we were always supportive of open discovery. It makes sense to show our evidence, as long as we have the opportunity to protect our victims, protect our witnesses, and as long as something that I don't know about is not going to come back and be the death knell for the case.
It strikes me too, and we only have a minute left, that as much as we all love to binge Law and Order, on a rainy Sunday, it almost does a disservice to the reality of the world you live in, because people think things are like boom, 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 boom. Oh, they'll get the lab results back by 2 o'clock. It takes time, doesn't it? It's not always dragging your feet. Sometimes it just takes time.
Justice does take time. I mean, you have real people in the lab doing those analysis, and then you have real people checking the analysis that the real person did, and that takes time. It's not something that can just be generated quickly. So we now have an opportunity, when those things are not turned around as quickly as we would like them to go to the court and to be able to say, listen, we know this has not yet been turned over. Can we still certify it's forthcoming? And then we can supplement our certification later.
Last 20 seconds. Are people happy with these changes now? I mean, are the DAs happy? And are you hearing from defense attorneys? Are they sort of happy? Or
haven't really talked to the defense attorneys. As a whole, I think the DAs see it as a step towards getting it right. I think we were very, very frustrated by the changes that came down. Initially, there was no funding attached. It really, really increase the workload on the average assistant DA. So this isn't really going to change our workload, but it's going to make it worth it when we make an innocuous error after being diligent and doing everything in good faith, that we can come to a reasonable compromise and we don't see those cases dismissed.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. We do appreciate it, shedding some light on this important issue.
Thank you.
New York City continuing to see developments and even mudslinging as the mayoral race continues to march toward Election Day. We're going to check in with our reporter Henry Rossoff down in the city for the latest updates on that. Quick reminder, if you have a comment or story idea, you can tell us all about it. Email us at news@news10.com. We're also on X, formerly known as Twitter, @WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. Federal politics could have an impact on New York. As President Trump indicates, New York City may be the next target for deployment of federal troops. Trump administration recently deploying National Guard troops at the nation's capital. Their stated goal, cracking down on crime and homelessness in the city. Opponents have criticized the move, with the D.C. mayor characterizing the action as authoritarian. The president indicated that he may want to use these forces in other cities as well.
Other cities are hopefully watching this, and maybe they'll clean up, and maybe they'll do this and get rid of the cashless bail thing and all of the things that caused the problem.
Cashless bail, the president just mentioned there, a statewide policy with the goal of keeping people from extended prison or jail time while they're waiting for their trial. It's been controversial since it passed back in 2019. Current frontrunner in New York City's mayoral race, Zohran Mamdani, saying this week that he would engage directly with President Trump if federal troops were sent here to New York. He also stated that he'd hire over 200 lawyers in order to resist this move legally.
There is much of that fight back that has to be delivered forcefully, rhetorically, through conversations both public and private, but there's also the act of governance that is its own fight back.
Joining us now to talk about all of this and updates down in New York City, reporter Henry Rossoff. He's got his finger on the pulse down there at Pix 11. Henry, welcome back to the show.
I try to keep my finger on the pulse. We'll see how I do.
Where do we begin? With so much to talk about. Let's talk a little about Mamdani. You know, if people were thinking, oh, he won the primary, this guy's going to fade away, it's not happening, is it?
No, and I think quite the opposite in the sort of decisive fashion that he did win the primary. We had some more polling from Siena this week that showed him really cruising along as the heavy favorite heading into the general election. He was at around 44%. His next closest competitor, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, of course, lost the Democratic primary to him, running as an independent now at around 25%. And then another big fall off. You have the Republican/independent candidate Curtis Sliwa, and then Mayor Eric Adams is all the way down in the single digits here. So as long as the field remains divided, and even if there is coalescing around one individual person, Mamdani the heavy favorite.
Yeah, it strikes me that Sliwa, Adams, Cuomo especially, all bring this baggage with them. They're such known entities and they've got their past. Is it so pro Mamdani, or is it more like, you know what, I don't want these other three?
I think it is a little bit of both, although it would be fair to say that Mr. Mamdani has very much excited people. I mean, the youthful, energetic, especially young voters, really his hyper-focus on affordability. I mean, we saw this sort of really tough news cycle for him a couple of weeks ago when we had that horrible Midtown shooting where a lot of people zeroed in on the fact that he said a lot of anti-police things in his past, calling them racist, calling them anti-LGBTQ, calling for the defunding of police. And he survived that news cycle, at least according to the polls, quite well by really focusing on his humanity, by focusing on the officer and the security guard and the other people who lost their lives, by talking about how he's evolving and changing and may not necessarily stand for all of those things that he said in the past. And he seems to have survived what was really, by any measure, a tough news cycle for him, and he came out of it still looking pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like from up here in Albany, watching the coverage down there and some of the press conferences and even commercials that are being put out on social media from his opponents, they've thrown everything in the kitchen sink at him, you know, especially the socialist word. Oh, no, don't call him this. He's a socialist. He's almost a communist. It doesn't seem to affect the numbers that much. It seems like people sort of either shrug their shoulders or they say, yeah, you could say anything about him. We'll see. At least it's a change. And it doesn't seem to bother people that they're trying to hang this on him.
Yeah, the latest line of attack is effectively trying to call him out as a quote-unquote champagne socialist, like socialism for thee, but not for me. And this was brought up by former Governor Andrew Cuomo really within the last week to 10 days. What he's come after Mr. Mamdani for is still occupying a $2,300 rent-controlled apartment in Astoria where he lives. It's the area of Queens he represents in the state assembly, even though he makes more than $140,000 a year as a state assemblyman and also has a wife who works. So they have some means to afford perhaps something nicer. Cuomo has argued his rent-stabilized apartment should go to someone who needs it more, has even sort of proposed this Zohran's law, saying anytime a rent-stabilized unit, and there are about 1 million of them in New York City, a sizable piece of our rental stock, should go to someone who needs it more. And Mamdani has said, listen, I lived in there since I didn't have a lot of money. Why should we be destabilizing people? And he says this is just a half-baked policy to come after me. Doesn't actually solve the problem. Mamdani, by the way, is the only one who says he would freeze rent control, whereas Cuomo favors a small rent increase. They've been going back and forth on rent control, which is a conversation, frankly, Mamdani is happy to have. He feels he's very strong on housing and affordability issues. Let's pivot a little bit to the stuff happening in D.C. and these threats and whispering that, you know, maybe this is all going to happen here with cashless bail and bringing in the National Guard to deal with crime in the city and clean up areas outside of Times Square there a little bit. Is that getting much traction or much attention down there, or are people just sort of waving at Trump in D.C. saying, whatever, go away? Well, it's certainly a concern. I think there is some consensus that at some point everyone here is expecting President Trump to deploy the National Guard, and what that looks like or for how long it would be or what the purpose would be is very much up for debate. But Mayor Eric Adams has been making the argument that crime is on the steady decline. If the federal government wants to come here and help with sort of big picture prosecutions like gang and drug takedowns, sure. I mean, he would welcome that support. What he's basically said is, we got this under control. Are things perfect? No. Things need to improve, but crime over his tenure, and this is objective, these are numbers, has sort of steadily declined. The bigger focus is if President Trump would really do this as more of a political move when and if Mr. Mamdani is elected mayor, and wants to use him as sort of an avatar or a punching bag as it heads into the 26 midterms, and will try to make things as uncomfortable as possible in New York City. I think so. The January of next year is where everyone's circling with this and somewhat expecting something to happen.
We're down to about a minute or so. Is there any chance that, I mean, and this is prognostication, but that Sliwa, Cuomo, Adams go have a cheeseburger together and say, look, guys, if we keep doing this, and he's going to be mayor, we're not getting enough traction individually. We've got to figure out which one of us stays in against him, and the other guys just get out and try to coalesce and make one last stand that way. Is there any kind of chatter with that behind the scenes?
Zero chance. There was a lot of chatter about this immediately after Mamdani won, but Adams said absolutely not. Sliwa said something like, you'll have to put me in a pine box 6 feet underground before I concede to either Adams or Sliwa. Cuomo expressed some openness to this, but you can understand why, because he's the next leading competitor. So this deal would seemingly favor him, at least according to the polls. So I do not see this happening. I think there is no expectation for this to happen at this point.
Well, you can't say any of it's boring there for you down there in New York City, Henry. We appreciate you coming
Never
on.
is boring in the city.
Take care and have yourself a good week. Moving on, right now, lawmakers in Albany have no plans to come back early, but advocates are looking to change all of that. When we come back, we'll hear why those advocates are calling for a special session. If you got a comment or story idea, please tell us about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN. Welcome back. Here at the Capitol in Albany, lawmakers aren't scheduled to return until the start of the legislative session in January of next year. This week, though, advocates are calling for a special session so that lawmakers can come back into town earlier to pass bills that didn't make it over the finish line in June. Capitol correspondent Jamie DeLine takes a look.
On Wednesday morning,
what do we want?
A special session!
When do we want it?
Now! Members from a handful of organizations want Governor Kathy Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins to call a special session. If that were to happen, lawmakers would have to come back to Albany before January. Those who gathered say state elected officials have unfinished business to complete.
The New York State Legislature has already failed us once. And how did they fail us? They did not pass any immigration bill to protect immigrant New Yorkers. They did not pass any bills related to raising revenue for the state.
One bill advocates would like to see passed is the New York for All Act.
The premise of New York for All is to say that absent a judicial warrant, so a warrant signed by a judge for someone's arrest, we don't believe that local law enforcement and local governments should be actively conspiring and colluding with ICE for the purposes of carrying out immigration enforcement actions.
Another bill they want enacted is the New York Dignity Not Detention Act, which according to the bill would prohibit government entities from agreeing to house people in immigration detention facilities. Neither bill has made it out of committee.
They failed to act this past legislative cycle. We know that. This is their opportunity now. This is their opportunity to make good on some of the promises that they make, but that they did not keep during the legislative session.
As of now, it's unclear if a special session will happen. The decision remains up to the governor and top legislative leaders. In Albany, I'm Jamie DeLine.
A new poll finds Governor Hochul's lead over North Country Congresswoman Lee Stefanik is narrowing in a potential 2026 gubernatorial matchup. According to this poll from Siena Research Institute, Governor Hochul leading the Congresswoman Stefanik by 14 points. However, Look at this. She was leading Stefanik by 23 points in the last poll, which was just last month, in a potential matchup. Now, despite Hochul's slimming lead over Stefanik, 49% of registered voters who took part in this poll say that Stefanik winning and becoming governor would be, quote, bad for New York. Meanwhile, 29% of New Yorkers polled say she has the right experience to be governor.
Back in June, Republicans supported Stefanik 55 to 15%. Now, however, Republicans have come home to Stefanik, and she leads among Republicans 75 to 13%. So that's the big difference. That's what's really moved the needle.
The poll also showed that Governor Hochul's favorability rating has actually gone up, increasing to 53%, up from 50% just last month. Back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit. By the way, if you got a comment or story idea, please let us know. Email us at news@news10.com. Also, reach out on X, which some of us still call Twitter, at WTEN. And finally, on Empire State Weekly, National Grid customers can expect higher bills starting in September. Public Service Commission approving a rate hike. Monthly National Grid electric bills will go up by roughly $14 in year one, then smaller increases over the next 2 years. Similar increases will come to gas bills as well. National Grid explains that the increases are to match with the cost of doing business. Next week, we'll be looking to talk with the Central Hudson Gas and Electric Corporation to get additional insight and reaction to these upcoming increases. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray. Hope to see you here next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of the show on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.